All right, this one right here, percent of a quantity, kind of attaches to the lesson we did for lesson 25. So here we have the math that we did in the last video. 5 of 25 are green. What is the percent? What percent is green? Well, it's a little different, but it's that you have 5 over 25. So 5 of 25 are green. What percent are green? So you write that 5 of 25 as your fraction. 5 is your part, 25 is your whole. And it can be simplified. Check that out. So you could take your fraction of your situation and simplify it if possible. It makes things a lot easier if you simplify everything. And we say, well, it's 1 over 5, which is exactly the same denominator that we had in the other lesson. And then we put that over 100 and we find that, well, 5 times 20 gave us 100. So we know the 1 times 20 will give us 20, and it's 20% of it is green. So you just put your whole and your part as a fraction, or your ratio as a fraction. You can simplify it. Then you find the multiplicative comparison to 100%, and that gives you what percent of it is 5. So 5 out of 25 is 20%. So if there were 25 questions and you only got 5 right, you got a 25 or a 20% on your test, which is not a good grade. So we can also say it this way. Well, what is 40% of 25? You know, so you can write your percent fraction and find the multiplicative comparison the other way. So we're trying to figure out what the part is. What is 40% of 25? So now in this case, we had to figure out the part of the percent fraction. Now we have the entire percent fraction, 40 over 100, and we're gonna find the multiplicative comparison the other direction. So you would say, well, you would write your percent fraction, 40 over 100, and then you would put your whole 25 down here. You would find your multiplicative comparison. So 100 divided by 4 is what gives me 25. So I know that if I multiply 25 by 4, I would get 100. All right, and then I have my 40 as my percent fraction. If I also divide that by 4, I would get 10. So 40% of 25 is 10, which makes sense because 5 is 20%. And 40% is double 20%, so 5 doubled is 10%. Okay. Now, here's another question. There's a soccer team. The soccer team won 80% of the games, okay? The soccer team won 80% of the games. So 80 over 100 would be our percent fraction. The team won 12 games. So 20% or 80% is 12, okay? So what is the whole? How many games did they play? We know that 80% is 12. 12 is 80% of something, but what is it 80% of? So again, you have your percent fraction, okay? And you know your part. You know that 80% of something is 12. So you can write this as 80 over 100, and this would be 12 over, well, you gotta do the math to figure it out. So here is that situation. So you have your percent fraction, and you have to find the multiplicative comparison, the equivalent fractions. So we know 12 is 80% over, I'm not sure. So I believe with this one, we're gonna look at simplifying our percent fraction. Oh man, you can kind of see the answer. But so what I did here was I simplified my percent fraction from 80 to 100 to 8/10. And then, oops, let me move this up. And then I simplified it even further to 4/5. So simplifying your fractions, whether it's your percent fraction or whether it's your part whole fraction, depending on what pieces you have. If you have the full percent fraction because they've given you that in the problem and you can simplify that, simplify it. If they've given you the whole part and you can simplify it, simplify it. It'll help your math. It'll make your math a lot easier dealing with smaller numbers. So here I have 80 over 100, which is simplified to 8/10, which can be simplified to 4/5. Then I put it next to my part, and we're trying to figure out the whole. So I find my multiplicative relationship. I say, what do I multiply 4 by to get it to 12? Well, I multiplied 4 times 3 to get it to 12. So then I do the same thing to 5. And 5 times 3 would be 15. So 12 games out of 15 games. 12 is 80% of 15. So they played 15 games. So you have to understand equivalent ratios. You have to understand multiplicative comparisons. And that all ties into what you learned in elementary school with finding equivalent fractions. So when you take your ratios and your percents and you write them as a fraction, then you can use your understanding of equivalent fractions to solve your math. It's all multiplicative comparisons because we use multiplication and division to create equivalent fractions, and we use division to simplify fractions. So whatever you do to your numerator, you do to your denominator. So hopefully this practice helps with all of that. So we'll do more practice in class.